Okay, the time is 4 o'clock. I will call the City of Fort Atkinson Plan Commission meeting to order. In person via Zoom on Tuesday, January 24th at 4 p.m. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Highfield,
Here.
Commissioner Kesnick. Here. Commissioner Lesko-Hare.
Here.
Commissioner Schultz.
Here.
Commissioner Gray.
Here.
Engineer Selly.
Here.
Manager Lemire.
Here. Okay, next up is review and possible action relating to the minutes of the December 13, 2022 regular Plan Commission meeting.
Highfield, so move.
Kesnick second. Sorry, Kesnick second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Next on the agenda, number 4, review presentation and possible recommendation to the City Council relating to the Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. We have our Parks and Rec Director, Brooke Francine, and our consultants on the line.
Yes, hello everyone. Brooke Francine, Parks and Recreation Director. Before you today to give you a little background about the Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, and then give Emily the floor to present the plan, who is representing MSA. As mentioned in the memo, a Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, otherwise known as CORP, is a planning document that sets goals unique to Fort Atkinson's Parks and Recreation program. The plan provides an analysis of parkland and recreation needs and demands, demographic trends, recommendations for improving existing facilities, bicycle and pedestrian facilities. It's important to have a plan in place to be eligible for state and federal grants for acquisition and development of open spaces and facilities. In order to remain eligible, the CORP must be updated every 5 years. And then I also wanted to mention all grant requested projects are required to provide matching funds equal to or greater than the amount of the grant award. So most of the time, 50% match grant. Also important to note that this plan identifies conceptual locations and recommendations for different types of projects and recreational facilities. In nearly every case, more detailed planning, engineering, study, budgeting, and discussions will be necessary before decisions are made to actually acquire land or construct recreational facilities. So back in April of last year, City Council authorized City Manager to execute a contract with MSA to create our first CORP since 1990. Since then, the Parks and Recreation Board, city staff, and MSA have worked on preparing the CORP through many public engagement opportunities that Emily will touch on throughout the presentation. The advisory board also had 3 board meetings between April and December of last year to discuss items, and then we also took a thorough parks tour to discuss needs and wants. So the board ultimately recommended adoption at the December 14th meeting we just had. And then with that, I will turn it over to Emily to present the CORP.
Thank you, Brooke. I'm happy to be here with you all this evening. As Brooke said, my name is Emily Soderberg, and I'm an assistant planner at MSA. Next slide. Again, to just sort of, Brooke did a great job giving a summary. Here's the major chapters of the plan, ranging from kind of a summary of Fort Atkinson to recommendations and implementation. And then again, as Brooke said, CORPs are really important for maintaining eligibility for state grants. And I'll just note the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Grant is kind of that key grant that a lot of municipalities across Wisconsin use to fund parks and recreation capital projects and parkland acquisition. Next slide. Here's a summary of our quantitative analysis that we conducted on behalf of Fort Atkinson. The city's comprehensive plan sets a standard to provide at least 8 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. The city currently has about 255 acres of parkland, which comes out to about 20 acres per 1,000 residents. So Fort's doing well to exceed that minimum standard, leaving about 154 acres surplus beyond that standard. We also compared Fort's rate of parkland per 1,000 to other similarly sized communities across the U.S. Using data provided by the National Recreation and Park Association. And the city is well above the median nationally for communities of less than 20,000 and nearly within the upper quartile. Next slide. A key part of any planning process is public engagement. And for this project, we held 2 focus groups with local civic and sports organizations. We had 2 pop-up activities at local community events, as well as we held a public survey. We had about 570 responses to the survey, which is great. And at some of our pop-up events, kids were able to design their own dream park with different cut out like laminated park amenities, and visitors to the farmers market were able to vote if they agreed with the plan's preliminary recommendations and place desired new amenities on within a map of the park system. Next slide. Key to our geographic analysis was preparing this 10-minute walk map that you see here, where the area in green shows the portions of the city where residents can walk about 10 minutes to reach a city-owned park, or about 1/4 of a mile. This is a best practice and kind of goal promoted by the NRPA and the Trust for Public Land, and is kind of a national goal for a lot of communities. You can see that the majority of Fort is well served by city parks within short walking distance, and those colored circles kind of highlight where the exceptions are. And in the text of the plan, the colored circles are used to kind of correlate between the map and the text. And as well, in those areas that are excluded within the walk analysis, the underlying residential zoning district is shown to show where people might be living. And the majority of Fort is really well served, with kind of some minor exceptions in the northwest corner and southeast corner of the cities. Next slide. So kind of keeping that previous map in the back of your mind, this is our proposed new parks and trails facility map. And it's a little bit small on the screen, but there are 4 total new proposed neighborhood parks, and they're kind of in those 2 areas that were highlighted on the previous map, in that northwest corner and that southwest corner. And these proposed park locations actually originate from the city's comprehensive plan, which was amended in 2022. But because they aligned well with our geographic analysis, we thought it was best to carry forward those recommendations from the comp plan into the corp. Similarly, we carried forward many of the proposed trail on and off-road trails into this map, and then also made some additional trail segment recommendations. And those segments were really focused on making connections or filling in gaps to make sure there were good off-road, or there were good trail connections between all of the parks. So namely, trying to connect the current terminus of the Fort Atkinson River Walk to the Bark Nature area, and then also Memorial Park. And then through the public survey, there was kind of a coalescing of comments about 4 different intersections in the city that survey respondents felt were unsafe for bicycle and pedestrian crossing. So those intersections are noted with the red cross on this map, and are detailed in more specifically in the text of the plan as well. Next slide. Another key part of the plan is we have this 2-page spread for each of the parks, where we have photos of different amenities, an aerial photo, a list of amenities and facilities with an install date if that was available, as well as a list of the recommended improvements for that park and a corresponding cost estimate. And those improvements are prioritized in terms of the time frame that they ideally would be completed. So higher priority projects would ideally be completed within the next 1 to 3 years, medium priority in the next 3 to 5, and and low priority in 6 years or beyond. Next slide. This table displays MSA's methodology for calculating a proposed park development fee. So parkland dedication and fees in lieu of dedication relate to the acquisition of public parkland whenever new subdivisions are platted or proposed. Park development fees, on the other hand, are intended to raise the funds to actually develop or build the facilities on the parkland that is set aside through the land dedication ordinance. So conceptually, there's a little bit of a difference between those 2 things. Key to this calculation for the park development fee is kind of the cost for developing a typical community park and neighborhood park. where community parks are a little bit larger. In Fort Atkinson, they're on average about 20 acres in size, have bigger facilities, and neighborhood parks are smaller. And in Fort, they're about 2 acres in size right now. And that total cost of those parks is broken down kind of into individual costs for different amenities. And all of those costs have been reviewed to make sure they're representing kind of 2022 dollars. And then as well, the other key portion of this calculation is the city's projected population increase over the next 10 years. So using the projected number of new dwelling units and the city's dedication ordinance, we're able to calculate a cost per new single family or duplex and multifamily dwelling unit that will raise enough funds over the next year to cover the total cost of developing new parkland that would be required through the ordinance that is on par with the projected dwelling units that could be built in the city based off the population increase. Next slide. This is just a snapshot of the capital improvement summary, which is at the end of the document, where we compiled all of the individual park improvement recommendations, their priority level and cost estimate into one table so that there's a convenient location to where they can all be viewed to kind of help with capital improvement planning over the next 5 years. And that full table can be found in the document. Next slide. And then finally, this is a draft concept for a splash pad at Ralph Park, which was a kind of a common refrain that we heard from during our public engagement. And this particular concept was kind of requested by the Parks and Rec Board. But I just want to note that this is a preliminary concept that was really just an exercise to explore one option for how that green space at Ralph Park could potentially be used. And there were other uses proposed for this space as well. And it's not a commitment on the part of the city to move forward with this exact concept in the near future, but was really just an exercise in exploring how that space could be used with this particular recommended amenity. Next slide. So that concludes my presentation. I am more than happy to answer any questions and walk through in more detail certain elements of the plan. And that's really the next step for this evening. Beyond this evening, the next step would be adopting the plan formally by the City Council on February 7th. And then after that, I will work to create an executive summary version of the plan, and we will submit the plan for certification by the DNR. So I welcome your questions.
Are there any questions or comments from Plan Commission members about the corp?
Yeah, I have a question. If I heard correctly, or maybe I should ask, did I hear correctly that the projected revenues from the residential improvements we're anticipating in Port Atkinson, that would generate the funds to cover most of what the future enhancements would be to all of the various parks? Did I hear that right?
So one of the recommendations in the corp is to by ordinance create park impact fees, park development impact fees. We do not have them right now. So that's a recommendation. It is not by adopting this plan or recommending that the council approve the plan, you are not approving new park impact fees.
Right.
Okay, so per their analysis, if those impact fees were to be implemented by ordinance and the development occurred in line with what their analysis was, then yes, potentially those impact fees would pay for the additional park improvements.
Okay, thank you for that.
I would also just add that it's to cover the cost of developing new parkland, so it doesn't apply to existing parkland. So you can't use park development fees to improve like existing facilities. It's all tied to new facilities that would be built through land that was required via the dedication ordinance when new subdivisions are platted.
So we do right now require land dedication or payment in lieu of land dedication for new subdivisions.
Regarding the fee in lieu of land, there's a chart that shows 5 cities. Oconomowoc shows up with negative fees. Is that just a misprint?
I'll take that one. He tried to describe it in the notes area. It says the impact fee is reduced by this amount every 1,500 square feet of land and 600 square foot of land dedicated per unit respectively. So they say first fee is for all dwelling units, second fee is for institutional, and then it's based on the CPI. It adjusts annually. So theirs is a little more confusing than how a lot of communities usually do it.
Okay.
So I believe their park development and fee in lieu of are tied in together.
Thank you.
Other questions from the Plan Commission? Okay,
I would move to recommend to the city council adoption of the 2023-2028 comprehensive outdoor recreation plan.
Second.
okay, there's a motion and a second. Any final questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Next on the agenda is presentation to the Plan Commission on the Tip of the Spear LLC concept plan for a 72-unit apartment complex along Campus Drive. Engineer Selly.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to introduce Ryan Quam is the owner of Tip of the Spear LLC. He's approached city staff with this development plan. Tonight is a concept plan meeting, so we'll take no action at Planning Commission. But we're free to ask questions of Mr. Quam, and I think our hope is that Ryan is able to kind of walk away from this meeting with a sense of whether to pursue next steps, working through the PUD process as we outlined there in the packet memo. So that Ryan, I can bring up a site plan. I think you've seen the memo that that the Planning Commission has, but I can bring up those elements in here if you'd like to speak to any of those. Just let me know.
All right, great. Maybe you want to start with existing site plan?
Sure.
So again, yeah, thank you for the chance to present to you tonight. And as Andy said, appreciate any feedback you can provide. Again, my name is Ryan Quam, owner of Tip of the Spear. I'm also owner of Quam Engineering. So you'll see Quam Engineering on the logo on these plans, and I'm pretty far along with these plans just because I'm an engineer and I can do that. So I think I hopefully flushed out a lot of the design issues, even if this project doesn't go forward. But again, the existing site plan is on the screen. I've been looking at this property for, I think, a couple of years now. I actually did some preliminary engineering on the property the city purchased to the north, and always knew this property was for sale, and have been doing some internal concept planning for quite a while, and ultimately purchased this property, I think, a year and a half ago, with the idea of developing it and then possibly even some of the city lands to the north. So yeah, this is the existing site plan. It's a decent size, although a portion of it to the north side is wetlands. I have done some initial permitting with the DNR to allow us some minor filling for some fingers of those wetlands in order to accommodate this development. There's 2 houses on the site with a couple of detached garages, older homes. I did work with city staff to get this annexed into the city, and I think we'll have to do a CSM as a part of this project if it goes forward. It's kind of a low-lying area. There's a existing septic field that's kind of at the end of its life. There's been stubbed sanitary water and storm to the site. I think my guess is to accommodate possibly a future road that maybe they were thinking about putting through here at one point. But it's kind of asking to be redeveloped in my opinion. I guess if you want to move to the proposed site plan. The proposal, and this is the phase one proposal. I don't know if you want to, maybe, can you just jump to the full proposal or?
Yeah, I should probably note for planning commission staff that this is the high school parkway or driveway here. So to the north would be the high school, and then this is Campus Drive. It's kind of difficult to see on the screen there.
Do you have,
Oh,
maybe
sorry, one
scroll
more.
forward to the phase two so we can see it all
Yeah, here
at
we go.
once?
There.
Okay,
sorry.
so this is the site plan that includes both phases. Again, north is to the right, high school is to the west, Campus Drive is to the south. So the proposal would be to build two 36-unit apartment buildings. I should mention that I also have previously developed some apartment buildings in McFarland. So I'm the architect of record for those buildings. So another business that I essentially have been running for the last 5 years, and it's been well received in McFarland. So the idea is to mimic what we did in McFarland and put the similar buildings here. The buildings in McFarland are 27-unit buildings. So 3 stories, 9 units on each floor with underground parking. So this footprint for these 2 buildings is exactly the same footprint. That, again, getting back to the site plan, the primary access would be from Campus Drive with a secondary access, hopefully onto the high school driveway. There's underground parking for each of these buildings, as well as outdoor parking. The refuse, I've tended to like having that in the garage. So that's going to take up a couple stalls in the garage. And again, there's the underground parking that would provide access to that refuse. This plan shows what I anticipate to be the wet pond that would have to be submitted to the city and DNR for approvals.
That's down in the kind of this,
down in the southeast corner.
south. Yeah.
Stormwater is a little bit tricky just because there's a decent amount of water coming from the site to the north. That water is actually kind of being bypassed, so it doesn't inundate the pond that needs to be designed for this site. So there's maybe a little extra stormwater than you would anticipate on a typical site, but every site's unique. But that's just a side note. Maybe moving on to the building plans. Again, it's a 4-story building. Each floor has 9 units, 3 1-bedroom units, and I guess it'd be 6 2-bedroom units. The upper level has loft units. I don't know if you have the pictures of the interior at all, Andy, from that I sent you, or
I did not
okay,
bring those.
yeah. So maybe we can go to the elevation drawing then. Just a mix of materials on the sides. We got fiber cement siding, stone veneer, fiber cement panels. Each unit would have its own patio or a deck. We go for it. I try to have patios on the lower level if the grades allow. Some of the lower level, I guess, decks are required just from an elevation standpoint. I guess the rental range, I have gone through a preliminary pro forma to see if I can get the numbers to work. And I have reviewed that with my lender and a little bit with city staff even. The rental range that would support this development is like $1,150 per month for the 1 bedrooms, and then up to $1,550 for the 2 bedrooms with the lofts per month. The hope is I typically like to break ground and then have this thing, the building ready to open in May. So the goal would be to break ground as early as July of 2023 for the phase 1 building, so that it would be available for rent May 1st, 2024. And then that would also hopefully provide an indication how high the demand is, such that I could break ground on the phase 2 building again, July or August of 2024, so that that building is ready to be opened and rented May of 2025. So with that, again, any questions that you have or any feedback would be appreciated.
Just a question. Has there been any kind of traffic study done on Campus Drive to determine whether in fact the amount of traffic that your phase 1 would develop can be handled by Campus Drive?
Yeah, I can answer that. Commissioner Gray, the area with the high school and the potential middle school that would occur there in the, in a decade or so, depending upon their timing, as well as the development that we have along Banker Road. There's kind of regional traffic issue out there that we want to study. So we're going to engage somebody to take that on. And that'll be a part of this. So I've basically have said to Ryan, as well as other players in that region, that the city will take on that traffic plan and make sure that those questions are answered before approvals of these.
And the other question would be the high school driveway for phase 2. How would that actually be handled as that belongs to the school district?
We've had some preliminary discussions with the school district. We currently have an easement, which is a 60-foot wide right-of-way easement for utilities. We do not have that for creating a public road there, but we have talked with them about that, knowing that it might become an important piece to the overall traffic plan there. So there's no commitments at all, but those discussions have begun, and I think this traffic plan will help inform that a bit.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll also just add a couple things just for everybody's information here. This is in our tax increment district number 9, and there is a TIF financing ask associated with this project that we are working on independently as part of the development agreement. But we're just at the concept plan phase of this right now.
I have a question maybe for the city staff. Can you compare the proposed rents that Ryan mentioned to the median rents in Fort Atkinson for similar size apartments?
We have several market studies as far one just recently in the fall of 2022. I do not have those rents off the top of my head. But Ryan, do you want to talk a little bit about the study that you did that or the information on which you based those rental rates?
Yeah, and I appreciate the question because it is concern for me as well. But yeah, frankly, what I did is I took the McFarland rates and I dropped them by like $150. And it was kind of a dart just based on what I'd heard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's as far as I've gotten as far as, so any information the city can provide, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, just off the top of my head, and I'm not knowledgeable that knowledgeable about rental, but that sounds high to me.
Mhm.
But
And then I will also say, just because it kind of plays into this, is that the rents have been increasing in McFarland. I don't know how it is in Fort Atkinson, but like where the rates are now versus where they're going to be in a year might be different as well. But I got to dial in on that.
I had another question regarding this site. Do you ever use any satellite imagery to overlay on your proposed site to see what sort of impact there would be on old growth trees or anything like that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. When we
Okay.
we oftentimes start with an aerial map,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and then we also would oftentimes do a detailed topo. So there are some trees like along the high school drive that are going to be able to be saved.
Okay.
And I didn't mention the phase 2 plan includes like a dog park. And so the idea would be to maintain the trees in the dog park and also plant that with many more trees. But for instance, there's a nice big pine tree like right in the north edge of that pond that I think is gonna have to go, that I really would like to save. But otherwise, there is gonna be a decent amount of grading that is gonna have to take out some trees, and the goal will be to have a pretty heavy landscape plan to get those restored. And if there is a tree that is on the fringe of possibly being saved, I mean, I'll bend over backwards to save it, but the site is kind of tight in order to get this all to fit.
Right. I would assume the land to the northeast, I guess that would be where the actual buildings wouldn't be, that has a better chance of maybe surviving. Some of those trees surviving for the time being anyway.
Yeah, there's no plans to do any disturbance over there unless there was a phase 3 or 4 or 5 or something.
And the pond, is that, I don't suppose there's an opportunity for more of a rain garden there instead of just a retention pond, or?
I did look at multiple strategies for stormwater, but and rain gardens are good for certain aspects of what's required for stormwater, but there's the rate runoff control aspect that requires a volume, and that requires a pond. So yeah, I feel like that's well, my stormwater technician is telling me that that's the design we have to go with.
Thank you.
I will make just one additional comment on the rental rates. Fort Atkinson has not seen a new apartment complex such as this in many years, probably decades. And this is proposed to be a market rate rental project, and any movement in our any additional housing is a good thing for Fort Atkinson right now. And even if those rental rates seem high, if there is information behind them, it would move people around a bit to open up more additional housing that may be older or cheaper and more affordable for other folks wanting to get into to live here in Fort Atkinson.
Yeah, I will say that the plans look attractive.
And then the other note related to that is, the goal is to have, I don't want to say high-end apartments, but I mean, we do have, granite countertops and stainless steel appliances and some nice lighting that hopefully is attractive to a tenant.
I see the Tip of the Spear and then the Quam Engineering LLC. Tip of the Spear, is that primarily your LLC, or are there other players in Tip of the Spear?
They're both my LLCs. The Tip of the Spear is the development business for this site, and Quam Engineering is my civil engineering business.
So no other members in Tip of the Spear?
Correct.
Are there going to be any single family housing or duplexes on this site?
No.
So these are the only proposed buildings for this site, correct?
Correct.
How about timing? Would phase 2, would that hinge on hitting a certain occupancy rate of phase 1, or how soon would the two come together?
So yeah, I'll just be honest. I mean, I've been building a building like every year for the last couple of years because it's been going so well in McFarland. And I mean, my hope would be, I mean, in McFarland, they're rented up basically the day we move in. It's kind of a race to get the right door in the right spot so that the tenant can move in on March 1st. When it opens, when it's basically wrapped up February 28th. I mean, it's I would say that my hope would be it would be similar, obviously, and I believe it's nice to have that 2-month period to know. I mean, I'll have the plans ready. I have kind of a team of contractors that I'm kind of promising them the work if it goes forward. So I mean, we'll all be kind of anxious to see how the rental is, and you kind of have an indication even before it's completed, because there's oftentimes a lot of chatter on, can I get a reservation? So again, in McFarland, we're opening, I guess it's April 1st now, and we have half of them like kind of reserve leases signed up before it's even rented or before it's even finished. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
I'll start off with some comments. I don't know if it'll turn into some questions, but several years ago, I moved to Fort Atkinson. In the first place I tried looking for housing was apartments, and they were very few and far between, especially for what I was looking for. I moved from Sun Prairie, where a studio apartment was going for over $1,000 a month. So a couple of things I want to say is, first, thank you for your interest and investment, in our city. If this move, as you've already done, purchasing the property, getting it annexed into the city proper, that a lot of communities are competing to grow. As you mentioned, McFarland, Sun Prairie, I think, grows at a rate of about 1,000 people a year. And Fort Atkinson is an attractive community because, we have people who live in town, they work in Madison. I work in Stoughton. Janesville is also close by, but it's very attractive place to work because it's a little bit quieter. And a house for an equal house that I purchased here in Fort Atkinson would go for over $100,000 more in Sun Prairie for the same spec house. So I know that, I guess the other thing I wanted to say is that, you're looking at Fort Atkinson, where possibly other cities are more attractive financially to go. And I think based on how much recent apartment additions we've had in the city in the past couple decades, this is something that I've heard many people say that they've wanted. And, we've read studies from UW Whitewater that state, and I think Jefferson County, that showed that there's going to be several hundred units shortage over the course of the next 10 years. So this would be a very welcome, I believe it would be a very welcome addition to the city. And hopefully this, can be a mutually beneficial venture.
Okay, thank you.
Is there going to be a professional management company contracted to maintain these units, the buildings?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I have one yet, though. I do in McFarland, obviously, but I don't have one in Fort Atkinson. So if this goes forward, I'd have to.
They're not built yet, so no, I understand. I was just curious as to when will be contracted.
Yeah, I don't want to manage them. Because I don't have time to manage them, but I would be looking for a management company, probably as it's being built.
Okay.
If not sooner. I mean, probably actually as it's going through the approval process, I should be looking for a management company.
Do you already have, contractors, plumbers, electricians in mind for the construction phase? And although I don't want to impose any additional hurdles that you would have to go, but I know we have several great plumbing and electrical businesses here in town. So
yeah, so all my buildings have been built by Riegert Buildings, and he's a general contractor that he subcontracts a lot of the trades, and he does some of the trades himself. So I would anticipate that he's out of Madison, but he does his due diligence and looks at different subcontractors to come up with the best price. And so it would make sense that Fort Atkinson subcontractors would be looked at for a lot of the trades.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the Planning Commission?
You're not planning any ingress or egress from Banker Road, are you? Into
No.
Into the site area?
Correct. Just off of the main access is off of Campus Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there's no action on this item at this meeting. It was just a presentation of the concept plan. I think we will look at moving forward with the plans. As noted in the staff report, we have there's a general development phase, which is step 2, and our site implementation phase, step 3. The Plan Commission will get additional views of the project and more details at that time. As I mentioned before, we'll also have, there'll be a zoning map amendment, a development agreement, and likely a certified survey map or some sort of plat to combine the two existing parcels that are there right now that contain single family dwellings that have no historic value. We've checked. Okay,
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
all right. Item number 6
Thank
is
you.
adjournment.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned at 4:40 PM. Thank you.